Hey Richard.
Hey, Juanita, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Fabulous, thank you.
I am glad to hear that you are fabulous. So today we are going to talk about restarts and limbos in life and especially in business. And I see you as the experts in restarts and living in limbo. And maybe you're in the best position to explain why I see you that way.
So it's a very interesting concept and one that I haven't actually really thought about before. And immediately when you position me as that, the first thought is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I think it's a really, really good thing. If
It's
I
a
think back
very,
to
very good thing, yeah.
it is a good thing. It's put me in places that I never would have expected I'd be in. And it's made my life extremely interesting, and it's blown every expectation I think I ever had for my life out of the water. If I think of when I left school and the idea and the dream I had for the trajectory of my life and the white picket fences and what I was going to do for a living and where I am now, I don't think there's not a single thing I don't think there's one thing apart from the fact that I've got two daughters. And I think I wanted sons at one point in time. But other than that, I don't think there's anything about my life that is how I planned it. And I've had to restart many, many times.
Okay, so what were some of the biggest when you're a speaker on stages and your celebrity persona? Many people know you for one thing. What is the most recent thing or the thing you're most famous for in terms of restarts?
Um, well, okay, so so I think from a restart point of view, it would be the fact that I have survived brain cancer 3 times, and that's in the last 4 years. And each one of those have been, as you can imagine, life can never be what it was before cancer, during cancer, post cancer. And just when I thought I had my stuff together, it knocked me again. So having to restart, having to restart, having to restart. But there were a couple of others thrown in there as well. So I think the first massive restart was varsity. So I was studying to become a lawyer, and that really just wasn't me. Dropped out, started to do triathlon, went back to varsity, did a bunch of other things that I loved, but also didn't finish because of triathlon, and then landed up as a swimming coach, which is anything but what I would have imagined. And then a restart when Health and Racket was taken over by Virgin Active, and all of a sudden the swimming school, which was hugely successful, we lost 43% of our clientele due to a new contract, plus the rent went up by 300%. So things changed dramatically. And at that point in time, with a young family, had to go and find what I guess we'd call a real job. And then there was a restart in real estate, which is something I never, ever, ever would have imagined. I always say that, real estate, being an estate agent, it chooses you, you don't choose it. And but that was the beginning of an amazing journey. And then the restart down to Port Elizabeth, and then a divorce. And that prompted another massive restart, and that was one I didn't expect either. And from there into training full time with Pam Guarding Properties, that was another big one. And then from there, the second time I went into remission, it was okay. I think I owe myself a new restart, and I'm in remission now. The risks are down. Let me stop full time work and become a full time speaker.
Okay.
And then when the cancer came back, it was a kind of a wow, was that a clever thing, So there've been a
Right.
lot of restarts.
So a lot of restarts. And the nice thing about a restart is that restart for me and in business and my own life has always been some of the highlights, because it's starting and it's fresh and it's new and it's exciting, and there's a certain energy to it that as an entrepreneur you kind of get addicted to. The difficult part for me has always been the time before the restart, the limbo, when one period has ended or you realize things are never going to be the same again, but you don't know what they're going to look like next. As you said, you don't know, or life before cancer and during cancer and after cancer can never be the same. Same in business. The life during start of a business and potentially the close or a major change in business, and then what happens after is a massive upset. So what do you do because I've got my tricks and tools that I use to stay sane and healthy during those times of limbo. But what do you do during a period after something's ended, or you receive some challenging news, and then receiving the good news that triggers a restart?
Okay, so that's a great question. I'm gonna go back one step though.
Yeah, sure.
And I think it's quite important to mention is that a number of times in my life, I've tried to hang on to the one thing whilst becoming the next thing. And even when I finished off with Pam Godding Properties, I was offered sort of a 6-month limbo where let's keep your job, for 60, 70% of the time, and with the rest of the time you can build a speaking career. And what I've learned in my experience is that's never going to work. It's very important.
I fully agree. It is incredibly straining on yourself and your resources and those around you if you try to keep a hold of with this one hand of something that is gone, that is pretty much gone, or pretty much over, and it doesn't allow you to spend the amount of energy you need to fully enter into this restart.
So that's exactly what it is, and it's the energy 100%, but more than that, it's the mental energy, and it's how you think, because that's the most important thing about a restart is restarting the thoughts in your brain. And one of my favorite quotes, which I think is so valid here, is Oliver Wendell Holmes, and he said a man's mind, but we'll pretend that he was in 2020.
A person's mind.
A person's mind wrapped around a new idea can never return to its original dimensions. And that's so once we're thinking new things, we can't go back to an old way of thinking. But so many of us try and hang on to that old way of thinking that thinking is going to serve us going forward. And a new start demands that we think differently. So what's been very important for me is to figure out what that is and define what that is. So for me, I talk quite a lot about the power of purpose and what is my purpose behind this new start. And that's quite messy in the beginning.
It is. People think purpose are this thing that you can, if you spend 10 minutes on it, or if we go away to the bush for half a day, purpose will hit you in the eyes. But it's never a definable thing. You have to really spend an incredible amount of time in it, and it's messy, as you say.
Yeah. So that's the important thing for me is taking the time. So I think that's where the limbo is really important. Because let's face it, the limbo part, you're not busy with the new stuff because you haven't got busy yet.
Exactly.
And you're having to create your own busyness. But before you do that, I think you've really got to take some time and define why this thing. And even if that it was forced on you, it's very important to figure out why you are going or where you are going, even if that is purely in your own mind. So even from a cancer prognosis point of view, and that's been particularly hard, where this isn't something I've chosen, something I don't want. I can't change it, I can't avoid it. What now? And there's the limbo where you've received the news, you can never go back, and somehow you've got to figure out what this is then now, and how do I then take this that is now and move it forward out of the limbo into this thing which is purpose. And I'm going to be very honest here, and I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to this. There is a period that is not just messy, it's depressing, and it is dark.
Yes.
Dark. And you don't know, and it's okay not to know. You don't have to know everything all the time. And what
that
I've
is
learned,
incredibly important. I'm going to interrupt you here and just pause there. You don't have to know everything all the time. And it's the same thing. You don't have to do everything at the same time. So you said something very important. You have to create your own busyness. And the trick thing then with purpose is, if you know where you are going, where you are at the moment, or you've got an idea, you've just got this little bit of solidity, that purpose, then the busyness in business you can apply towards achieving your purpose, towards serving your purpose. So it's not just busyness that keeps you distracted, but busyness that turns into business.
Correct, very much so. And that's the same. So from an athletic front as well, I've done a number of 4 or 5 full Ironman events throughout the cancer, and that was part of my purpose. If I can do this thing while I've got cancer, I'm going to survive the cancer. And if I can do this thing while I've got cancer, I'm proving to my 2 little girls that their dad's going to be okay and he's going to make it to the other side of cancer. So it was very important for me that I do those things. But I've often said to people,
why was it important? So here's the thing. I can't even jog for half a block. Even though my purpose then at that moment is to be more balanced, be more healthy, etc. I physically can't do it without feeling like I want to die. How can you be in literal, with respect, be dying from a cancer diagnosis and then figure out how to do an Ironman? Are you a magician? Are you a wizard? Where is your cape? How does that work?
Okay, so I love the fact you said you felt like you were dying. Because the first question I'm going to throw back at you is, but did you die? And no, you didn't. Here we are. So I think that's, there are a couple of very important things that are going to come out of what you just said. Yeah. And the number one thing is what we think it should be isn't necessarily what it is or what it should be. So your idea in your head is that I just want to go and run around the block, because if I can do that, then it's wellness and it's balance and all these wonderful things. And you've got an idea of how fast you think you should be running, what that is, how you should be feeling while you're doing it, and how you should feel after you're doing this. And unfortunately, and this is exactly the same with any new thing, you come back extremely disappointed because your expectations of what this thing should have been and the reality of what it actually was are two different things.
Way different, way different.
That's a really important thing about limbo and about a restart, is you're doing something that you've never done before. That's what a restart is. You get to start again, but you're starting something different.
Yeah.
You haven't done that before. So how can we sit back and say, well, I think I know how it's going to be. This is how it's going to be. And then when it isn't that way, we're now disappointed. But we're disappointed by our own expectations. So I don't want to just spend too much time on that, but just let me help you with this. What if your expectations were that for the first 2 weeks, all you were going to do is walk around the block, no running involved? And that maybe in week 2, you were going to walk to that stop street and then run until that stop street. And then from that stop street, you're going to walk to that one. And then you were going to run until that lamppost. And then, so gradually you're now learning to think differently, because you are learning new behaviors, and you're also learning that, how can I put this? You're understanding how your body responds, or your mind responds, to the various new challenges that you're placing in front of it.
But that implies that I have time. I have time about 1 hour every 2 months at the moment to go for a walk. And I know for a fact that you've done a couple of Ironmans, and you were planning to do this one as well, with I can't even call it minimal training. It was almost no training at all, right?
It's kind of zero.
So what separates me then from not having time, and translating this into a business context, being under so much pressure to perform, to bring in the money, not really having time to gradually get used to something? Surely you've figured out a trick to force a restart and to get out of limbo a lot quicker?
All right, so I think this is, so I'm in my head here, there are a lot of things we need to go back to, but let's handle this one. So I think you've just summed up the average person when we start something new, and when we're an entrepreneur and we're in business, we're looking for the silver bullet. You've just asked me for the silver bullet. You said, Richard, what is that thing? Surely there must be a magic thing. There's a guy in a magic cape, or Superman, or there's a silver bullet somewhere. I don't have time, so can you give me the secret? So I'm going to tell you that there is no secret and there is no shortcut. So the reason that I can do an Ironman now on literally almost zero training is because I haven't done zero training. I've been doing triathlon since 1992, 1993. This would be my 12th Ironman. I've done this thing before. I know how my body responds. I've trained for it really, really hard in the past. I've raced it hard before. So this isn't something new for me. It was new on cancer, but the event isn't new. So let's get back to something else, and that is what let's just finish this off. Juanita, there's no silver bullet, and I think we know that. When you start something new, when there's a restart, you have to do the hard yards, and And there's that wonderful word that I've heard a bunch of speakers talk about relatively recently, and that is accretion. And an accretion ring is that an incredible ring of light, amazing colored light around a black hole in space. And essentially an ring is billions of tiny little particles, and those particles congregate around this black hole, and because there's so many of those particles together, they make something extraordinarily spectacular. And that's what I want to say to you is okay, let's go back to, you asked me a question and then I'll bring accretion in. You said, Rich, but I don't have the time. I've got an hour a month. Okay, well then sorry about your Ironman. Sorry.
But that's very important. That's very important. If you can't do the work, you can't have the reward.
There we go. So I would want to say to you is it's like starting anything new, and there's a restart here. And even surviving cancer, I've come across people who have been forced into a restart of thinking, and they said, no, I don't want to think that way. I'm going to think like a cancer victim. I am a cancer victim, so I'm going to put my pajamas on, sit on the couch, and wait to die. Because this is just too big for me, and I don't want it enough. I don't want to survive badly enough to do what I need to do to survive. So I've coached a lot of people in my life, and I've coached a lot of people in Ironman. And the first question I ask is, number one, how much time do you have? And number two, how badly do you want it? Because those two things are going to tell me what your finish time is going to be. It's as simple as that. It's a formula. How much you put in, how much you want it, is what you're going to get out. And that's exactly the same for business. So I would just say to you and argue the point and say, but you clearly don't want it enough then. You don't want the fitness and the balance and everything that comes along with this. So, but Richard, I've only got an hour in a month. So I'm going to say, well, let's can that idea then, because I can tell you where it's going to go.
That's very important. And I've just had a consultation, actually, just before our chat now, had a consultation with a client where I had to call him on business. What do you want? Do you want the huge income, or do you want the freedom? Why did you start this business? And is that starting point still relevant? And how much do you want it? And it took an hour and a half to understand that you cannot want everything without being willing to give everything. And giving everything is not what business or life is about. It's understanding your limits, understanding what you're capable of. And there's two things you said that to me was very important. One is, you've never done this before. That is a big block. So you need to understand, when it's something completely new, it's gonna be tough. But there's another thing. I have done this before. You know, you train for Ironman, or Ironman triathlons, and so for you, the techniques are there. Even though the expected level of fitness might not be there at that stage, you know, the thinking patterns, you know, the strategy, you know, the frameworks. And that's what I find in my own business. Whenever I start a new business or need to advise a client on how to refocus in their business, or do coaching for a person who seems to be so stuck and so lost, it's literally to say, you've got this, you've done this before, you are still here. Everything you've done up until this point has empowered you to be here. And it's when you speak to a fellow speaker before we go on stage, you know, when the butterflies are here, it's not your first gig. The nerves will always be there, but it's not the first gig. Trust in that knowledge that you've gotten so far in life, you've gotten this far. So surely there's more of that, even though the restart, even though the context you might be starting in might be completely strange, you've got skills that are transferable.
For sure. So it's funny, I wrote down two things before we chatted, two things. And one of them is, you're equipped with everything you need for a restart. And I think that's the thing we don't realize, is every single thing that's ever happened to you in your life, all the experiences you've had, all the experience you have in doing things, has equipped you in ways that so I think a lot of people who think that their lives haven't been spectacular, they haven't achieved something remarkable. And what they don't understand is that purely the things that they have already achieved, although they don't see them as remarkable, have prepared them for everything that is to come. And we are spectacularly equipped in more ways than we could ever imagine to do a bunch of things we've never done before. And I love asking people the question, how do you know what you're good at? And immediately they like look back into the past and like, well, because I've done it before. you know, or how about all the things that you are still brilliant and amazing at, but you just haven't done them before? How did you get good at those things? Well, you tried and you failed, and you tried and you failed, and you tried and you failed. And I think that's also the part of the, and I don't want to bring failure too much into this too much, but being prepared to fail. So I think I have the confidence of knowing that I'm going to land on, somehow I'm going to land on my feet. I'm equipped, and somehow I'm going to land on my feet. And even if I don't, it's okay, because I will just navigate something differently. And that, if somebody had to say, what is your superpower? I think that would be it for me, is this idea that I'm enough. I'm enough to, and I'm equipped, and I can handle whatever comes. If I want it enough, I'm prepared to go through what I need to go through in order to get there. So let's just go back to the,
yeah.
Sure.
No, go for it. Let's go back to
this idea of accretion. And this is the part I wanted to bring in with you, with your training, is that Ironman, the event, is not the hard part. Everybody thinks that the Ironman, the actual Ironman, is the hard thing. It's getting into the sea and doing a 3.8 kilometer swim. It's a 180 kilometer bike ride, and then it's a 42.2 kilometer run. And like, oh, mind blown, this thing's so big.
Absolutely.
Well, it actually isn't. It isn't, because it's the 9 months, the 8-9 months that run up to that are really hard. And that's the accretion. It's, if you want to make a new start in life, you've got to figure out, you've got to accept that nothing big is going to happen immediately. There's no massive finish line. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to do, my life's going to take a whole new aspect, and I'm going to become an Ironman or an Iron Woman or whatever. I'm going to do an Ironman. And then the next day you do an Ironman. It doesn't work like that. The big things don't happen overnight. And a new start requires that you do a whole bunch of things regularly and often. So accretion is the act of layering. It's doing little things over and over and over and over and over again until you've got something big and substantial. So what if I said to you that so the Ironman has now been moved out to November. So let's even can that one. Let's say the next one is in March. I think it's the 21st in 2021. So you've now got a year. How are we going to start training for an Ironman? I'm going to say to you, let's walk around the block, 20 minutes tomorrow morning. We're going to walk around the block. You're going to say, but that's nothing. I've got to run at 42. It's okay. Just do that tomorrow. And then the next day, what are you going to do? And the next day, what are you going to do? It's identifying, and in business, we call it income producing activities. What are the income producing activities that you need to do today that are going to lay? So in a year from now, you're going to look back and say, wow, I've achieved something substantial. I've crossed my finish line of an Ironman. And the hard part is in the middle of winter, when it's dark outside at 5:30 in the morning, and you have to dress like an abominable snowman, and you go out in the dark and you get frostbite in your nose, and you know, as your nose is running because it's so cold, it's like freezes and then your nose, and you come back and it's still dark. I was like, geez, okay, I just did a 12K run, it's like still dark. And then putting a speedo on in like lunchtime, and it's dark and grey outside, it's freezing, and going to a gym.
Yeah, I don't want Ironman enough. I definitely don't want Ironman enough, if that's what it takes.
And that's the 80-20 principle, is how bad did you want it? You know, the 20% of the people that make 80% of the money, or the 20% of the people that are, you know, get the success, and the 80% give up. So but that's the hard part. And it's the same with starting a new business. There is no silver bullet, and any restart in life requires from you that it is going to be hard. And nothing changes if nothing changes. And change is messy, change is hard. And when life throws us lemons, and you know, everything's turned upside down, and we look at this like a cancer prognosis, and then we look at our lives and we think, WTF, what the hell now? There's only one way forward, and that's to accept where you are. And not to be a victim of that stuff. And I think that's what happens, that limbo part. And you started off, the question was, how do we get out of the limbo? You've got to accept that you're not a victim. Sitting in this limbo, you can choose to be a victim, but the only thing you really are a victim of are your thoughts. And yes, that takes some time. It took time for me. Each time the cancer diagnosis came, it took more time to accept the fact that I had this thing, and to figure out how not to be a victim of it. And then to figure out what are the things I need to do that are good for Richard. And if I can do those things regularly and often, where can I go? And I think that's the same with business. I don't think it's any different.
It's not different at all. And the important thing you said about the Ironman is crossing that finish line. Often in
Have I
business,
lost
there's
you?
not a finish line. There's just continuation of business and targets, etc. But especially during the start of a business or after a major upset, sometimes you lose your one big client that was supposed to fund anything, and now you're under massive cash flow problems, or it just doesn't turn out the way you predicted, or that one contract didn't come through, or one of your star employees leaves you, or a product launch fails, or whatever that is. You need to figure out what is that purpose, that finish line, that thing you want, and what are the steps you need to get there. So whether it's an Ironman, whether it's dropping the kids at school, whether it's losing weight, whether it is starting a business or restarting a business after many things have failed, and whether it is when you've chosen to end something, or whether external factors have chosen on your behalf without any warning at all, that things are now changing. The process in business and in life is the same. And you said you don't want to bring failure in this discussion too much, but maybe we should talk about the failure and the depression, because it's real. It's real when the realization hits, and I am very privileged that I haven't had that in my personal life, but absolutely in business life so many times over, when it's just this numb feeling and you just feel disempowered, and the only thought running through your head is, I don't got this. I've got nothing. I've worked to this far for absolutely no gain. It's all gone. And I don't know if I've got the strength to start again.
So a number of my restarts have been like that. So when the swimming school, when things changed there, again, it was starting from scratch. And it was, am I going to earn the money? Can I do this thing? This isn't necessarily something I want to even do.
Mm-hmm.
The divorce was really hard. Nobody ever gets married to get divorced. And it's the last thing I wanted. And there's always going to be, it's like, it could be a partnership that's gone two different ways. It could be selling out business, could be, the concepts are very, very similar. And the emotional roller coaster there is massive. And how do you survive this, the depression that comes along with the divorce? And there is going to be depression. And then what now? Am I ever going to find somebody? Am I ever going to be happy? Am I ever going to live with somebody in the same house again? What about, their kids, my kids? It's a minefield of the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute you start running that through your head, that's self-destructive, but it's inevitable. But again, getting that idea of, so I talk quite a lot about happiness, and it's getting that idea of happiness. Nothing has to happen for you to be happy. And even in the times when it was worse in my life, I could still be happy. But I had to figure out what made me feel happy. Where nothing had to happen, I am just happy in this moment. Even if I feel like I'm dying from cancer, I can still be happy in this moment. My girls are in my house, or if I'm doing things, or there's happiness. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with business. Is what are the things that make me feel happy now and nothing has to happen? And why do we have to project this idea of where I have to get to, or where I have to be for me to feel successful and happy and all of those good things? And I think the next thing is you end the one marriage, is divorce, and your head goes to that next phase. Well, will I ever find somebody again, and do I want to get married again? Well, why are you even thinking about getting married now? Just love yourself for a second. Just figure out. So there's the limbo. The limbo is, and because we hate the limbo so much.
It's terrible. It sucks so much. It sucks so much.
But that's the idea of, let's learn to be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. Because, okay, this is a big thing. So nothing in your life, nothing in anybody's life is ever going to change when you're comfortable.
True.
Full stop. So
True.
If you're wanting things to change, but you're comfortable, good luck with that. Things only really change when we are uncomfortable. In fact, when the level of discomfort is that high, things will change. And that's why that comment that says, never waste a good crisis. Because a crisis is level of discomfort, and a crisis is a divorce, and a crisis is the loss of a business, and a crisis is a cancer diagnosis, and a crisis is some virus or whatever it is. But the crisis is an opportunity for you to understand that out of this discomfort, something remarkable and incredible can come if you choose, or you can choose to be a victim.
I just want to say, if you choose, sometimes it's easier, or it has been easier for me, if I had the choice to have to let go or to change versus if I was forced to change. The crisis is often easier to be in limbo because I don't have the guilt of this was my fault. It is something completely external, and I find for myself, and from a business point of view, I can flip over into the acceptance bit and starting to be creative and make plans a lot quicker than I can when I've had to go through the process of acknowledging that something needs to end and something new needs to start. So
Yeah.
crisis, the opportunity in crisis for me is I'm able to get started a lot quicker. But what I found then is that depression is delayed. So my trick for myself is to fake it a little bit in my own mind and to get going, to use that initial adrenaline spike of crisis mode. I need to make a plan now, to push that as hard as I possibly can, to just have a framework, a plan, a purpose, a list of things to do, a list of things to get stuck with, because I know it usually hits me after a week then, where the adrenaline has died down and you go, hang on, reality feels a little bit hard. And what I then cling to is my list. So I don't have to feel positive to do something. I don't have to feel hopeful and create from that hope. I can just literally switch on my mind and go, this is what I've identified, stick to the plan, let the feelings run their course. And somehow they always seem to match up over time.
That's the point for me. And again, that's that Ironman analogy, is that if you've got the goal there and you know what the small step is that you have to do today, and despite how you're feeling, it's just get up, turn off the alarm, no hitting snooze, go and put the running shoes off on in the dark and go for that run. And when you come back, everything's going to be changed. It'll be different. You're going to rewire your thoughts. But there's certain things that you actually just have to do. And I think that's why a lot of people don't do it, because it's hard. And again, that comes back to how much you want it. So yeah, there is a lot of that, and that's mental tenacity, and it's how strong you are in forcing yourself to go through the discipline of what needs to happen. And I think that's the thing. I don't think I know. So an Ironman is not actually 3 disciplines. An Ironman is 4 disciplines. It's the swim, it's the run, it's the cycle, and then it's the mental aspect. Because the race is that long. So you've got 17 hours to do this thing in. It's too long.
But it takes 17 hours of moving.
I didn't say it takes 17 hours. I said that's what you've got. Some people do it in 17 hours, but I'd like to do it in less. Let's try and make the suffering stop. But
I don't want that enough. I do not want an Ironman enough. I'm not going walking ever again.
But if you stand on that beach, and before the race has even started, you're already thinking of the finish line. You think of all these things you have to do. It's too big, mind blown. So the important thing is you just have to start.
Okay.
And then the mental part is breaking this thing down, and it's saying, okay, all I have to do is just the one stroke. It's the next stroke. What's next is getting to that buoy. The first buoy is 300 meters out. What happens next? I turn left off to the next buoy. It's breaking this thing down, and that's making it easier for yourself. So I think that's really important. But the part that I'm the best at is the mental stuff, the mental toughness. And I think this is exactly the same in business. Well, I know it is in an Ironman, even if you're wanting to race this thing and win your age group, and I've been lucky enough to come 16th overall in Ironman South Africa, first amateur across the line. It's something I've done really well at. But even when you're trying to race to be the first person on the podium in your age group, or you're trying to be top 20 overall, you cannot race anybody else but yourself. And that's the same thing in business. The minute you try and compare your results to other people's results, who are not you. Our pace is all different.
You are making it bigger than it needs to be. You are setting yourself up for failure because you are creating this monster in your mind, and you're focusing on the monster, not on the steps. So you are disempowering yourselves to just focus on creating the steps and serving the steps.
Correct. So here's a really good example, and it's taking Ironman. So some of the worst Ironman races I've done. So Ironman Wales, 2017 was apocalyptic. The weather conditions were horrendous. They're the worst they've ever been. You can Google that.
Okay.
The thing is that every single person in that race is having to compete with identical weather conditions. So there were people that as you went past, they were moaning and they were bleating and it was horrible, and they sucked in how horrible this experience was. And then the others who saying, well, it is what it is. The only way I can get to the finish line is just to keep moving forward and to keep on doing the things I know I need to do, and tick off the little milestones as I go through the race, and I'm going to get to the finish line. But the conditions are identical, which is why we see some businesses in horrible market conditions, some businesses in recessions that do extremely, extremely well. We look at that and say, well, how come everybody else tanked but you didn't? Well, they were concentrating on their own race. Simple as that. The thoughts in their head were, what can I control? The only things that I can control are the thoughts in my head, and I can control my own business plan. I can control my own people. I can control my own stuff. And if I can just control that stuff, because I want to get there enough, I'm that determined, I've got that much discipline, and I'm not going to worry about the other stuff because I can't control it.
Yeah.
So figure out what you can control.
I think often people confuse acceptance for approval or liking, and they're afraid of saying, and this I've seen especially in businesses where an industry is undergoing a massive transformation, or a business is undergoing a massive change. They go, well, if I allow myself to accept this, I am implying my approval. I am saying that I like this. I'm saying that I agree with this. I'm saying that I'm fine with this. Acceptance is not that for me. Acceptance for me is a decision point. It's a logical decision starting point that sets me up, and that it sets business up for further decisions down the chain of forward focusing, rather than focusing so much on the present and becoming involved in the external environment. I think we need to allow ourselves a lot more to split acceptance from approval, liking, I agree with this, etc., and just go for, I hate this. It sucks. It's not what I wanted. I don't approve of this, but I accept that I've got to make a plan, and use that as a starting point.
Oh, so I'm going to take it one step further and say that it's what we accept that's important. So do I accept that the market is crap right now? I don't have to prove it, but do I accept that it is? Yes. It's very different to saying I accept that a crap market means that I'm going to battle right now.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
That's a big distinction. So the one thing is saying I accept the fact that I've got brain cancer. I accept it. I can do nothing, and until I accept it, I can't figure out what I'm going to do about it.
Yeah.
But I don't accept what the doctors are telling me about how long I've got to live, about how my body's going to respond to the treatment, about what I'm allowed to do with my life in terms of, can I exercise, can I not exercise? Every single one of the specialists said, Richard, we advise you not to exercise. Don't go and do an Ironman. You've got 6 months to live. Next time you've got a year to live. I can accept that I've got cancer, but I refuse to accept that I'm going to respond to the cancer the way that the average responds to the cancer. In the same way that we as businesses can say, okay, I accept that market conditions are not ideal right now, but that doesn't mean that I cannot thrive within these market conditions. It's a very, very different form of acceptance.
It is. Richard, as always, it's been such an inspiration and such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so very much. Have an awesome weekend, and we will chat again soon.
Thank you so much. I'm absolutely delighted to be chatting to you, and yeah, thank you. I would love the opportunity to force out my current thinking and to think about my own stuff differently. So thank you for that privilege.
Awesome. Cheers.
Cheers.